Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, Fastamai, good evening and welcome to Update, Manx Radio's daily roundup of the top news stories from around the island. And here is what's coming up in the next half hour. Questions over Manx Care's plans to cut the number of operations it carries out. We'll hear from the MHK, whose question revealed this information, what Manx Care has to say and how it's been received more widely. Also tonight, could we see cruise ships docking around the island at places other than Douglas? And we hear from a resident who's undertaken a challenging physical feat to raise money for mental health charities in memory of his sister. We'll also keep an eye on traffic and travel as well, and if you'd like to get in touch, you can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First, let's join Christian for a roundup of today's main news headlines.
The Infrastructure Minister says it's not possible at this point to know when disruption to bus services on the island will end. Busvannin continues to publish daily lists of routes at risk of cancellation, blaming staff shortages and sickness. An Onchan MHK says she's shocked that Manx Care is reducing the number of operations it carries out by an average of 5.5 theatre lists per week as a cost-cutting measure. It's estimated to save approximately £220,000, which represents a 1.3% contribution towards reducing the forecasted overspend. The Alamar Medical Society believes that reducing general surgery, ENT and gynaecology procedures will further worsen the existing backlog. The Isle of Man should stop trying to fight reality on trying to increase the population to 100,000. That's from the Chamber of Commerce, which says government needs to rethink that target, which forms a key part of the economic strategy. After one of the best queen scallop seasons in recent times, more than 94% of the total allowable catch has already been landed. Figures from the Scallop Management Board show more than 1,000 tonnes of the shellfish had already been brought ashore by the end of September. And Prince William knighted Sir Mark Cavendish this afternoon at Windsor Castle. Cav, who holds the most stage wins in Tour de France history, was recognised in the King's Birthday Honours List earlier this year. In international news, Israel says 8 soldiers have been killed in fighting with Hezbollah in Lebanon. There have been intense clashes in a number of border towns. The Labour peer at the centre of a row over donations to Sakir Starmer's under investigation by a House of Lords watchdog. Lord Ali, who gave clothes and gifts to the UK Prime Minister, will be asked about whether he failed to register interests. And US singer Noah Khan has the UK's biggest song of the year so far. The official charts company says his track Stick Season has sold 1.7 million units. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift's record, The Tortured Poets Department, has been named as the biggest album of the year. Those are the Update News headlines, next at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. It's going to stay dry with clear intervals this evening and overnight. Mainly moderate east or southeast winds, and minimum temperatures overnight will be around 10 Celsius. Tomorrow it's going to stay dry. Plenty of bright or sunny spells, moderate southeast winds and maximum temperatures of around 15. And then Friday it'll be mostly cloudy but dry. Stronger southerly winds will be developing though. Sunset this evening, 6:51. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 7:25.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the north for over 30 years. Supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Patricia Wild Opticians is celebrating over 30 years of friendly, caring service in Farm Hill and Ramsey. Visit us for professional eye care with stress-free parking. Phone Patricia Wild Opticians on 813 977.
For over 25 years, Langness Maintenance Services have been the block paving specialists, including property maintenance, fencing and landscaping. Fast, reliable and competitive. For a free no-obligation quote, call Paddy on 49667. Langness Maintenance Services, 49667.
One architectural design company has particular expertise in achieving planning approval for a wide variety of projects, from landmark buildings to spectacular homes. Talk to the experts at Ellis Brown and get your project off the ground. For excellence in design, search Ellis Brown.
You're listening to Update on Manx Radio. It's coming up to 5:05. Now, as we just heard in the headlines, Onken MHK Julie Edge is criticising Manx Care's decision to reduce the number of operations by an average of 5.5 a week as a cost-cutting measure. Now, this move is estimated to save around £220,000, which is just 0.07% of the overall health budget. The Isle of Man Medical Society has called it a misguided effort to save money and believes that reducing general surgery, ENT and gynaecology procedures will further worsen the existing backlog. Julie Edge says she is shocked at the revelation.
Again, it's the people of the Isle of Man that are going to be impacted by this, and waiting lists are going to increase because that's the only outcome of cancellations, which they've stated are selected within general surgery, ENT and gynaecology areas. My concern for anybody with a health issue that they're waiting is now they're going to be waiting longer, and we've invested so many millions into reducing waiting lists in certain areas. Here we are we going to create another one? And then there'll be a call for, we need extra money, we've got a waiting list. So services to our people are being reduced, but we've not seen any tangible reductions in any other areas. Something does have to give, but when I was managing public funds in my roles, many multi-millions, you didn't cut the most important services. You looked for cuts and savings and efficiencies elsewhere. £220,000 out of over a £300 and nearly £400 million budget is a very small amount, and to be reducing by 5.5 theatre lists per week is significant. Theatre time, surely when people need operations, is one of the most important things as an island we should be able to provide, because we don't want to be having to then send people, when their condition gets more serious, off the island where they're away from their families. It's the fact that somebody is waiting on a list now for surgery and they're going to be told, sorry, we're making these reductions and we're putting it back. The time that people are in pain and using up GP appointments is going to be significant. The Chief Minister said at the government conference that he's going to take immediate action on Manx Care. I want to see that immediate action and what the Chief Minister's proposing there. I didn't expect it to be we're reducing theatre lists and saving £220,000.
So that's the Onken MHK Julie Edge, whose Tymwell question revealed Manx Care's plans to cut the number of operations it carries out. Well, news editor Tessa Hawley joins me now in the studio. I mean, Tessa, obviously this decision has not landed very well politically or with the public. What's Manx Care saying?
Well, Manx Care says whilst this action is not ideal, it needs to focus on specific areas where spending can be reduced with immediate effect, and that's in order to bring it into financial balance for this year. You'll recall that the health body is currently predicting a £16.8 million overspend. So it says reducing elective theatre lists for a maximum of 6 months will cut costs on theatre and anaesthetic staff who work on the bank. But it's probably important to reiterate here that Manx Care believes these cuts will only save £220,000.
So we've heard a lot before about the reliance on bank staff, obviously essential if you can't get permanent employees, but clearly that will come at a cost.
It does, and it's an eye-watering one at that. Manx Care says it's spent £84,000 on bank staff costs each month in the first 4 months of 2024. But it says this is something it expects to reduce throughout this year. The health body says modelling has taken place within ENT, gynaecology and general surgery, which indicates that based on the current waiting list position, the reductions in the weekly list allocation will not cause those specialties to exceed the sustainable waiting list size. It also says it's focusing on improving theatre utilisation by challenging surgeons to make the best use of the theatre list which is allocated to them.
Has the Health Minister said anything about this decision?
He has, but not an awful lot. Naturally, Manx Radio invited Laurie Hooper to comment. He says Manx Care has been told to enact its contingency plan to reduce spending, that was from the Treasury Minister, and take operational decisions to try and achieve this. Mr Hooper says the health body and his department have presented to the Council of Ministers in respect of the financial pressures, and says whilst any significant changes to service would require changes to the Manx Care mandate, the decisions taken to date rest within the operational sphere of Manx Care.
And Tessa, one body that is not happy about these decisions is the Isle of Man Medical Society. What has it said?
So it's fair to say the Society hasn't been backwards in sharing its views. It says reducing elective surgery is a misguided effort to save money and will only exacerbate the already significant backlog of operations which people are waiting for. Now, it's expressed profound concern and strong opposition to the decision, saying the cuts will have severe and far-reaching consequences for patient care and the overall health of the Manx community. Now, you can find the full statement from the Isle of Man Medical Society at manxradio.com, and you'll also be able to hear from the Society in Manx Radio's breakfast programme tomorrow morning.
Tessa, thank you very much indeed. You're listening to Update on Manx Radio, 10.5 minutes past 5. Would you like to see cruise ships docking in ports around the Isle of Man? Well, Visit Isle of Man's currently working on plans that would see just that. This year has already been a record-breaking one for passenger numbers, with around 20,000 people coming to visit. Deborah Heather is the chief executive and has been talking to Andy Wind.
It has been a disappointing season in terms of weather, but that's the same across the whole of the UK, our biggest feeder market, so you have to take the rough with the smooth. This year was affected by a very rainy beginning of the season and then a really early Easter, and they always knock you for six a bit. But the opportunity for us still remains. The cruise season has been better than last year. We're talking to Liverpool, who are working with some company called Global Ports. They've outsourced their cruise over there, and they think there's 800 ships in the Irish Sea, so there's still a lot for us to go for, which is brilliant news. I think the sea terminal, we as a visit team will be moving down into the Welcome Centre after we've made some structural changes in November, December time, and from then on in we'll be working towards prepping that whole area for the season. We are about to contract some people to go into the other pods, so fingers crossed we can make it as lively as possible, and actually not purely focused on cruise. We can have events and things outside of the cruise days so we can showcase our produce.
Are we at capacity with cruise liners?
No, not at all. We will always have slightly limited because we haven't got a deep water port, so the way we have to take people on and off the boat. But we have actually the capacity to do more bigger ships in Douglas and then push some of the smaller ships into the other ports and towns, which is great for the other local economies in different places as well. They do spend an awful lot of money. It's a myth that they don't spend in the economy.
I was going to say, can you nail that fallacy? The fallacy that cruise passengers spend, they pay to come off the boat, and then they know they're getting free food and drink on the boat, so they don't spend.
Cruise UK estimates £70 per person, and that was last year's numbers. I don't know what they'll go to this year. They have a way of calculating that, and we take their average spend. We know from the excursion companies what those that join the coaches and go around the island, how much they're spending, which is an awful lot more than the £70. So we're taking a low average, but we think it was about 1.5 million last year, and this year it will have grown.
How do the cruise companies, do they get in touch with you to book a slot, or how does it work?
We have a company we work with that take the bookings for the cruises, then coordinate. They're a ground handling force. They coordinate with the tours groups, they coordinate with the Manx National Heritage and Manx Heritage Rail and all the other people that offer excursion opportunities, and they organise it from there. So, yeah, there is different parts to it. We need to do some more business development, but that's great because it's all upside as far as I'm concerned.
That's Deborah Heather, who's the chief executive of Visit Isle of Man. 13.5 minutes past 5. Let's turn our attention to business brought to us by Ramsey Crookall. And Pinewood Studios says it's planning on closing its TV department next year. Now, you might remember the Isle of Man government previously had shares in the company but sold them in 2016. In a statement, Pinewood says it started a consultation process with staff members who may be affected, and TV shows already booked will not be impacted. Now, the stock market report brought to us also by Ramsey Crookall tells us that UK and European stocks closed mixed as investors assess the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and fresh unemployment data in the Eurozone. The dollar gained after an Iranian missile attack on Israel drove the buying of safe haven assets as investors fretted about the widening of that conflict. Oil prices rose on fears the conflict could disrupt oil supply from the key producing region after that ballistic missile strike. And gold is taking a breather after rallying in the last session on that escalation in the Middle East, while traders waited for more clues on US interest rates. The commodities then, gold finished off 0.56% at $2,648. Brent currently stands off 0.38% at $74.15. At the close, the FTSE 100 was up 0.17% at 8,290. The Dow Jones a short time ago was up 0.12% at 42,208. And the Nasdaq was up 0.2% at 17,945.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsay Crook all later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsay Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramsaycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, the good news so far is all looks okay out on the roads, down on the sea and at the airport as well. But as ever, if you spot something when you're out and about that we're not aware of, 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
It's 16 minutes past 5. Andreas Commissioners say rural local authorities should be helping each other out. Well, this local authority had a debate last night about the Northern Civic Amenity site, and local democracy reporter Emma Draper was there.
Andreas Commissioners discussed the ongoing situation with the Northern Civic Amenity site and Bride Commissioners. The board sent a letter to the local authority asking for details of when an alternative for waste disposal was communicated to residents, but this was left unanswered. Concerns were raised about the lack of minutes published on their website, and Chair Jackie Farragher said residents wouldn't know what was happening if they're not made available. Jimmy Allison, Andreas Commissioners' representative on the NCAS Joint Committee, said he would dispute a comment made by Bride Commissioners that the Chief Minister broadly agrees with the decision to drop out. I spoke to him after the meeting.
I think from my point of view, Bride getting out, we're short of funds, so obviously that affects the running of the site. So we've gone from not recycling as much as we like to recycle, but when you're down 57,000 a year, you've obviously got to cut back, and that's what we've done really, which has upset the public. But at the other hand, any business, and I've been in business all my life, if you take 14% of your business and get rid of it, you've got really nothing left. I would say, without hurting Bride sort of thing, because Andreas and Bride should stick together. They've just got to bite the bullet and get back in and raise their rates.
Also on the agenda was an update about the new children's play area. The equipment had been delivered to the island and is in storage, but the clerk confirmed it had been moved and could be damaged. She said it is insured, but the board agreed to ask the people storing it to let them know if the equipment needs moving. A quote has also been provided to install the fencing into concrete rather than bolting it down. However, Vice Chair Susan Crane said she would contact them and ask about each installation method. It was also agreed that the money to cover the cost would need to come from the rates or additional fundraising, but this will be decided after a response is given. Andreas Commissioners will next meet on Tuesday, the 5th of November.
Local democracy reporter Emma Draper. 18 minutes past 5. Now, as I hope you know, here on Manx Radio, we do always welcome your thoughts. And of course, one of the ways you can share them is on Man and Line every weekday from noon. And that's what a former MHK and minister did today when he told us he believed the establishment is ruining itself and is sadly out of control. Chris Robertshaw was a Douglas East member and also Policy and Reform Minister before he retired from politics at the 2021 general election. He said on Man and Line today, government needed to make major changes if it had any hopes of succeeding.
We've got ever bigger government and it just keeps growing. We've got shrinking reserves and they just keep shrinking. We've got a health budget out of control. We've got, and I'm one of them, a growing elderly population. We've got the government budget year after year after year in deficit. We've got a government producing ever more regulations, and we have no serious major economic initiatives coming down the road that are going to significantly help us. So people like me are going to say, well, how are we going to address these issues? As regards the big issues, you hear very little or nothing from our current group of MHKs about the big issues. We've got little prospect in 2 years' time of individual manifestos addressing the big issues. And we've also got a civil service which has absolutely no intention of grasping the big issues. When they're asked to save money, they tend to look to the frontline services to cut costs rather than the back office large administration process. And you end up asking yourself the question, how the hell are we going to deal with these issues, and how are we going to manage to achieve success? And I think it means to do so, we're going to have to face up to some really big questions. And what I would ask government to do is not to come out with what they think are the fast fix solutions, because I don't think there are any. What I'd like government to do is to list these issues and then seek support and guidance as to what the options for us are to actually seriously respond to these. Because if we don't respond to them, we're just going to carry on seriously drifting into ever greater problems. Right now, we're in a position where we're heading towards losing our position as a cost-effective tax jurisdiction. And if we lose that, where the hell are we? So there are ways of making our government much more efficient and smaller. We're going to have to do that. The public have got to find faith again in government, and right now it's not there. And it will not be there until government shows itself capable of becoming a much more efficient, productive organisation. Right now, the establishment is running itself, and sadly it's out of control, and things have seriously got to change.
Some strong words there from former MHK and Policy and Reform Minister Chris Robertshaw. And as I say, you're always welcome to contact the man in line. 66 13 68 is the number if you'd like to call and speak to Andy live on air. New callers especially very, very welcome. If you'd like to drop an email to the programme, it's maninline@manxradio.com. 21 and a half minutes past 5. An island resident has raised more than £600 so far for mental health charities after undertaking an intense physical challenge in memory of his sister. Neil Olcott did 500 push-ups, pull-ups and a 50-mile bike ride every day for 5 consecutive days. Christian spoke to Neil and asked what he'd hoped to achieve.
If I help one person, the loss of a loved one is not very good. And if I can inspire somebody to get help for somebody, or even get help for themselves, in a couple of years' time, somebody comes up to me and said, "You've inspired me to get help," or "I got somebody else to get help," it'd be worth it. Just look after each other. We all should do more. We all should be looking after each other, because it is a ticking time bomb at the moment. It's a knock-on effect with COVID and all sorts. So I just look out for each other. Look out at work, your workplace.
And what message do you hope to convey about mental health throughout these fundraising efforts?
It's just be honest. Just don't be scared. We all suffer from these insecurities or demons. Just be open and just talk to each other, because there's nothing worse if you bottle it up.
And that is the thing that a lot of people do tend to bottle it up and think that, well, other people have it worse than me. My issues aren't as prevalent or pertinent as another person's.
Yeah, it's all irrelevant, isn't it? It's all, if it's meaning for you, it may maybe not be bad for somebody else, but for you, it's quite bad. So even if you think, oh, my issues are not very good or not very important, they are. If you're thinking it, they are important. So you just speak to somebody, even just a friend, just to talk.
That is Neil Olcott, who is talking to Christian Jones there. And if you'd like to find a link to Neil's fundraising page, you can find that on the news page at manxradio.com. But what an incredible thing to do. 500 push-ups, pull-ups and a 50-mile bike ride every day for 5 consecutive days is really quite a challenge. Something, though, I'm sure that our sports editor, Rob Pritchard, would be well up for. No, you wouldn't, would you? You're looking at me.
Not, no,
probably not. But I think it just highlights just what an incredible challenge that was. Lots going on in the sporting world today, Rob.
Indeed. Well, first this evening, he's been and done it all throughout his glittering career, but today, yet another huge moment in the distinguished life of Sir Mark Cavendish. The Manx missile officially received his knighthood from His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales at Windsor Castle this afternoon. The 39-year-old was made a Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in the King's Birthday Honours List on the 14th of June this year. Well, back in July, Sir Mark made history to become the greatest Tour de France stage winner of all time by claiming an unprecedented 35th stage victory at this year's event, and Cavendish becomes the first person from the Isle of Man to be knighted since Sir Norman Wisdom 24 years ago. Cricket now, and the Isle of Man men's T10 squad, I should say, have been looking to bounce back today as they return to action at the 2024 European Cricket Championships in Spain. Having suffered a trio of defeats yesterday at Qatar Oval in Malaga, the Manx side got off to the best possible start earlier in their opening game with a 6-run win over Czechia. They managed 167 runs in total, with captain Ollie Webster and Eddie Beard managing 91 runs between them in their opening partnership. Meanwhile, they've just taken part in their second match this afternoon in the playoff qualifier against Estonia. The Isle of Man have just finished their innings in the last few minutes, giving Estonia a target of 156 to reach. Whoever wins this match will face Greece in tonight's playoff final, which is due to get underway at 7:30pm. And in athletics, Isle of Man athlete Regan Corrin has become the latest recipient of the David Teese Award for Excellence. The Manx long jump and high jump competitor received the accolade as part of the Isle of Man Athletics Track and Field Awards. Among his personal milestones in 2024, Corrin became the first Manx athlete in history to clear the 7-metre mark in the long jump in June, beating the Isle of Man long jump record for a second time this calendar year. And the following month, he earned his first Great Britain call-up at the European Under-18 Athletics Championships in Slovakia, finishing 4th in the high jump. Last month, he broke the Manx Under-20 high jump record at the Southport Waterloo Open by clearing a height of 2.13 metres, surpassing the previous Allen benchmark of 2.10 set by Martin Aram in 2001. Or should his performance at that meeting be ratified, he will become Europe's #1 Under-18 high jump athlete, as well as #4 ranked globally for that age group.
That is incredible, Robert. 2.13 metres, that's just slightly taller than me. I mean, that is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I was always completely useless at high jump. You know, when you had your sports day at school, it was the one I absolutely dreaded.
It's a tough technique.
It really
Very
is, yeah. I definitely didn't have it. Were you a high jumper?
I wasn't, no. I also found discus quite difficult.
Oh, yeah. It's too heavy, isn't it? If it was a frisbee, it'd be all right. Javelin wasn't great at that.
It was more the technique that I think I found difficult. Some mastered it. I was not one of them.
No. So we're very grateful that we have such great sports people here on the island. And as you mentioned there, Sir Mark Cavendish really does have quite a ring to it. You can see a lovely photograph of him on the Manx Radio Sports and other Facebook page as well. Well, that is all from Update this evening. Thank you so much as ever for joining us. Do remember that for more details on everything that we've been talking about, you can just head over to manxradio.com, and we have the Manx Newscast section as well. That's the longer form interviews. We only ever really play a very small section on air, but you can feast yourself on the longer interviews and the Manx Newscast. Coming up next, it's Spotlight with Howard Kane, brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council. A look at what's happening culturally over here. Then Chris Kinley will be with you live from 6pm. Then it's Country Roads time with Andy Wint from 9, and Rhianne Evans is here from 10pm with After Hours. Whatever you're doing this evening, do try and enjoy that sunshine while you can. Have a good one, and we'll see you back here at 5pm tomorrow.